Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of my webinar series, where I talk to experts from the field on different topics that might be pertinent to the domain of marketing, sales, and business in general. As you know, that I usually talk to experts in the field, and today I have an expert on everything got to do with AI, and especially how organizations go about trying to implement AI into their different initiatives. I have the wonderful Miss Chanthing Vashum, who goes by Chan, who has agreed to talk to me about how her company, a company called RandomWalk, which is a startup in India, which I had a chance to go visit, is looking at putting AI in the map in India and trying to make sure that they're helping companies utilize the potential that is AI. So, Chan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Professor Deva, for having us on your podcast. We're very excited about this conversation today, and good seeing you again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chan, so random walks, again, that's one of those things which was something that I got to know because of an illustrator that I happen to work with, Sriram, who's a mutual acquaintance and a mutual friend. And tell us a little bit more about what random walk is. What does random walk do?
Absolutely. So, RandomWalk, we are an AI products and services company. We are headquartered in Singapore, but we work with clients across the globe. What do we do? First thing is we build AI products, one of which we will be talking about today, which is AI readiness. And we have a product around, helping organizations manage their enterprise data. And we also have products around computer vision. Second thing that we do is we provide AI managed services as well as building custom AI solutions. So let's say company wants to apply AI to automate their workflows or to analyze, customer behavior, or they want to detect safety violations. We can build what they need. And the third thing that we do, which I'm also personally very passionate about, is our AI upskilling and training. So we offer, workshops and courses to executives and professionals. Because when we speak about, AI, technology is one side of the coin. But at the same time, if people don't understand how to work with AI, it just doesn't go anywhere, right? So we have an academy set up for that.
Great. And what is your current role in your organization? I'm guessing if you're a startup, pretty much you have many hats. But if I were to ask Chad, what is the hat that you love the most? So what would that be?
It is definitely our, training division.
Yeah, indeed. Is that what your background is? Do you come from learning and development yourself?
That's right. That's right. I come from learning and development background. I've worked in hospitality, healthcare, and now in the technology space.
Wow, I can imagine. So a lot of the things that you're talking about are where it's very people intense, where they have to be interacting with customers and how AI can actually come in a great way of these people to practice their skills and practice their learning so that when they're on the field with the customers, they're doing the best. So it kind of makes sense that what your passion is links to what are some of the things that you're doing as well, right? But today I want to pick your brain on something that piqued my interest. So essentially, when I was looking at Random Walk, and you had this AI maturity index and AI maturity model. Tell us a little bit more about what this model is and kind of the genesis of it. Why is it that you came up with this idea of having an AI maturity model in organizations?
Absolutely. So we actually have two tools under our AI readiness umbrella. The first one is for organizations. So the first tool is designed for organizations, basically, to understand how prepared an organization is to adopt AI successfully in the company. Because today, everyone is talking about AI adoption and implementation, right? But readiness is something that is often overlooked, and successful, AI implementation requires careful planning, not just enthusiastic adoption, right? So that's for
Yeah.
the organization. And we have the second product, which is for individuals. Again, this is something that you, me, business leaders, professionals, university students can take up to check, your individual AI literacy level. This is very interesting because there was this report by Deloitte where 72% of business leaders cited lack of AI awareness as a major barrier for AI adoption, right? And I'm sure you would have seen this, Professor Deva, the report from World Economic Forum, which states that 97 million new jobs will emerge because of AI by 2025, which means organizations have to check AI literacy levels of their employees, and use that report to plan targeted, upskilling and reskilling programs. And when employees are more AI literate, they're definitely more comfortable, experimenting with AI ideas, and thereby you have more innovation happening, and
Indeed.
your company is more competitive. So that's high level of the
Yeah.
AI readiness product.
No, but I really, really like this idea because at the end of the day is what you're talking about is it's one thing to say I want to think about AI and roll it out within my organization, but the question is my organization ready? And also what you also need to understand is that depending upon where your organization is, it might also have a different kind of a trajectory, including what kind of resources would be needed if I need to bring my organization to the level that I'm not only talking about top management, which might actually be a lot more instrumental in the initial part about saying why AI is going to be important for the organization. Like, of course, in terms of whether they're literate themselves, that's a different story altogether, which I think would be very curious at some point in time to see whether there's a correlation between leaders who show high AI awareness themselves, and would it have an impact on how much they push AI initiatives? And are they also working in companies where the AI readiness is going to be a lot higher? But that's something for another time, right? Now, why is it important? So you talked about something about why you're going to have new jobs being created, 97 million jobs being created when everybody else is talking about, hey, my job is going to be made redundant, and essentially we're talking about job creation and all that kind of stuff. And this is where my question to you is that is that one of the main reasons why you also felt that there is a gap in the market for you to come in and say, hey, we're going to work on putting together a tool that can kind of hold a mirror against many people. It could be at different levels to see where they are. Is that the reason?
Absolutely. Like you rightly said, this came from, real pain points that we saw in the field, right? So when we were working with AI integration projects,
Hmm?
and companies would come to us with, really big expectations, Professor Deva, saying, we
Yeah.
want to use AI here, we want to use AI there, we want AI to transform everything, right? And but when we start scratching the surface, they didn't have the organization wouldn't necessarily have the data. They don't have the
Mm,
infrastructure. There is no alignment between teams. And I'm so glad you spoke about leadership, AI awareness. Because when there is no AI awareness in the leadership, there may be no long-term commitment plans,
mm,
or budget allocation towards infrastructure or team upskilling. Those commitments may not be there. So we realized that that the lack of preparedness was the root cause of many AI failure, and there's so many reports around this, right, Professor
indeed.
Deva? There's a report by Gartner which says that 85%. You see, when we talk about AI adoption, there is, there's so many pros to talk about. We see the high impact of
Mm,
AI, how AI is improving efficiency by so and so percent. So it's very exciting. But not enough is spoken about the high failure rate of AI project,
ah,
right? The Gartner report states that about 80% of AI projects do not deliver. It's because of poor data quality or little or no relevant data, right? And another interesting publication by the Wall Street Journal, which says that 70% of generative AI projects are stuck in the pilot phase and it's not able to scale up
mm,
further. So everyone's chasing the AI buzz because it's like the shiny
yeah,
new thing. but AI needs data, and it also needs structure, it also needs alignment, it also needs leadership commitment, and across all of these areas, right? So we developed, like you rightly said, we developed this AI assessment tool to give companies a clear, honest picture, or holding up a mirror, like you said,
Mhm.
to tell them where they currently are, but also to sort of like give them a roadmap towards how to move forward safely and
Yeah.
strategically.
Neat. And I really like one of the things that you mentioned, and that's been the focus of my research for close to 20 years, not with AI, of course, but
Mhm.
mostly with the idea of how technology implementation in organizations sometimes gets stuck on all the things that you mentioned. But there's one thing that we tend to forget, that is, it might fundamentally change the nature of jobs and processes and companies, and this involves people. So people might suddenly find themselves either having to rely on certain people within the organization across different functions, or they might not be able to rely on them because that job might be made redundant because they're doing other things. And this is a fundamental change in the way we work. And awareness is saying that AI can do this, but actually realization that it can change processes, it can change the way we work, or the
Mhm.
people in your organization work, and that you will only come from being aware that it is just not about technology silly, but it's also about how technology is transforming, augmenting and automating parts of what you're working on as well. So I think, which is what I think is also very nice in terms of holding a mirror is great. And then of course, when the leaders now start taking it down, making sure that we are going to go from, we are in this phase, we want to go to the next phase. Also, don't
Mhm.
forget that it is a change issue, and you also need to understand how technology is likely to change processes, roles, and people. And I think that's pretty much where I think having an organization and a leader take it, but as well as people within their organization take it, might be very interesting, because it can hold a leader understand what they have as against where are their people. I think it's really cool. I mean, I just wanted to add this because listening to what you were saying, it kind of rang a bell in terms of all the failures that you were talking about, in terms of either not taking off the ground or not taking off at all.
Mhm.
Right? Failure to
Mhm.
launch. Those my favorite topics of a paper that I was working on. Failure to launch. You just don't launch it, and it could very well be that you might have the right mindset and everything else, but you underestimate the change
Mhm.
dimension of things. And I love this as well. So
I'm
now,
so glad, Professor. I'm so glad you brought this up. You
yeah,
spoke about leadership, you spoke about change, and you spoke about people, right? I'm so glad you spoke about this because when it comes to digital transformation, a lot of focus is given on the technology, but
yeah,
not enough focus on the people.
mm,
So one dimension that we measure in our assessment is actually innovation and experimentation culture, right? What is
excellent.
the appetite for change in your organization? How ready are your people to actually welcome these AI tools? Are they ready to start experimenting with these tools? Because at the end of the day, your people can make it or break it. So I'm so glad you brought it up. I just had
Indeed,
to
right?
jump in there. Yeah.
Oh, no, no, I love it. That would be a nice segue into what goes into your tool. But I just want to say something which is, again, I think what's going to be very interesting is to see if there's a correlation between whether, when you talk about experimentation, is
Mm-hmm.
your people may be willing to experiment, but are top management going to be willing to experiment, right? And I'm guessing you're also going to have those kind of issues in where top management could be middle-aged folks, Gen X, or maybe boomers, whereas the people within the organization might be more the or Gen Ys right now, or Gen Alpha, or whatever it is that they're talking about right now. And that could also be something, and I think this is, the more I hear about this, and it might be very obvious to a lot of people, but the more we need to pay heed to all these readiness, is where does this readiness come from? Is it an aggregated score across the organization, or is it just one or two leaders who do not necessarily represent the rest of the organization as well, right? I think that's something which I think you have something in your tool, but I'll let you talk about it, saying that when you have your readiness tool, I know that there are three levels to the tool, correct? Right? So take us through the three levels of the tool that you have there.
Absolutely. So, like you rightly said, I'm going to start with leadership first, right? In
Yeah.
fact, our assessment is designed in such a way that we start with the leaders first, where
Mm,
we look at the leadership, leadership vision and commitment. Do senior leaders understand AI? Do they
mm,
have long-term vision for AI, or is it just reactive? Let's do
mm,
this because everyone else is doing it. So we
mm,
really try. One dimension is focused only on measuring leadership, vision, and commitment.
mm,
And in the leadership level, we also look at the strategic alignment, right? So are the AI initiatives tied to actual business goals, or are they just isolated technical experiments that's happening in the organization? So at the organizational level, we also look at governance and ethics, right?
mm,
What's the approach to responsible AI? And are there, data policies, fairness checks in place? For example, in industries like, I'm sure you know way better than me, Professor Deva, industries like, for example, finance or healthcare, it's
mm,
heavily regulated, right? So
mm,
before you can even think about implementing AI, is your team aware of the compliance?
mm,
Is your team aware of the risk involved, right?
mm,
And what are you doing about it? And our assessment also looks into the skills and talent. Does your workforce have AI capabilities? And if
mm,
not, what is the plan that you have? And this is the most important part at organization level. That is data and infrastructure, right? Do you have the right kind of data? And is it clean? Is it accessible? Is it secure? And are your systems talking to one another? And finally, at the organization level, what I was just speaking about, which is the innovation and experimentation culture. So
yeah.
all these questions is something that a business leader would answer.
Yeah.
And what we do is he would get an immediate report. Once he fits in all of these answers, an auto report is immediately given to him, which pinpoints where the company as a whole is on the AI readiness scale. So there are
Yeah.
like 5 stages to AI
Yeah.
readiness: an organization that is AI unaware, and then you have organization in ideation
Mm,
stage where they're
mm,
exploring the
mm,
possibilities, and but they have they don't have a clear plan or vision. And then you've got emerging, they're
mm,
experimenting with 1 or 2 AI projects in the
mm,
organization. And then you've got established, you have a good governance framework in place, they have good data quality checks in place. And then you have aspirational, where you're like, example to your
mhm.
industry, you set the best practice standard, right? So
Yeah.
this is the report that the business leader would get. Now, once you have this, the next thing that we do, as you rightly said, AI readiness assessment is not a one-person assessment. The next thing that we do is we zoom in on the departments.
Mm,
Every business function head would take up some what we call the digital maturity assessment. Here,
yeah.
what we do is we pick up, 5 major functions of every department, and then
Mm,
we see how digitally mature those functions are,
mm,
right? So, for example, let's say in HR, talent acquisition, is the organization still doing that manually, or is it automated? What kind of
yeah.
advanced automation? In learning and development, how is your content being generated? Are you still using
Mhm.
manual processes for that, right? So we do this assessment at the departmental level, and each department head would also receive a complete report indicating where the department stands on the digital maturity scale. And we also go one step further here, Professor Deva, where we showcase, AI use cases relevant to that department, right? So,
Fantastic. Yeah.
um, as you know, not every business function head is going to be tech savvy, right?
And you,
And they may not even be aware how AI can add value to
mhm,
their business function. But
mm,
doing an assessment like this, getting a report like this, at least they can walk away saying, I can see how AI can help my team now, right?
mm,
I've got to use this use cases for me to go further and explore, right?
mm,
That's what we do at the departmental level. And the individual level assessment, again, this is available as part of the complete organizational package. And the individual assessment is also available as a different package altogether,
mm,
where
mm,
anyone, you or me,
yeah.
university students, anyone can take it out, right?
Mm,
Um, because even with the best AI strategy, it won't work if your
exactly.
people are unsure or if your people don't have adequate AI literacy. So at the individual level, the assessment has four different levels. So you're categorized as an AI learner, an AI enthusiast, you're AI practitioner, and at the highest level, you as an individual, you're an AI champion. That means you're leading AI initiatives. You know how to drive, AI scaling across the organization, right? Now, at the individual level, this assessment is not only for technical folks. It can be taken up by
Right.
anybody, right? In
Indeed.
fact, we look at, your awareness of real world AI tools,
Yeah.
whether you're aware of how AI can add value to your
Yeah.
business functions. So it's very, day-to-day function oriented. And even at the individual level, you would get a report. So for example, let's say, I take up this assessment and I and end up at level 2, for instance, then I also get a complete, learning path with course recommendations on what I should do to upskill myself. And this is something that you can pick up from our academy as well. So that's pretty much a high
Indeed, right?
level overview.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that maybe later on we can probably, in another session, we can go break down to each one of them and talk about it in detail as well. And I'll tell you why this, I was just smiling when I think about this, is because recently I was talking to a particular company, and it is not in the context of AI, but they were
Mhm.
looking into how AI could be used to, first of all, connect the skill sets of individuals, and it had nothing to do with the AI skill set, but the skill set of the individual with the right kind of training program for them. That is to say, my job requires me to have such so and so skills,
Mhm.
and they do a self-assessment, and based on the self-assessment, there's an AI algorithm which picks up saying that we suggest these courses. Right. The interesting is this is an application of AI, but when you talk about how you are talking about how you're structuring it, it's the same as well, right? Essentially, what you're saying is you're doing an assessment of the AI skill sets of individual or capabilities of individuals, and then linking it there. Now, I took the tool myself, and that's pretty much why we are having this conversation, because I wanted to know in terms of AI. Of course, there are companies out there which also do this, but this is a company that I had a chance to interact with. So I said, okay, I took it myself, but I took it from the viewpoint of the organization readiness. And I am not the leader myself, but I gave my perception based on what I hear and see within my organization,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And a couple of things which I was thinking of was the fact that I'm sure probably you do it as well, is that it would be very nice to actually try and see employees' perception of where how ready their company is,
Mhm.
as against when top leaders say it, because that could also be something that the leaders should be aware of, saying that, hey, we think we're going fast, whereas our people think that we are not going fast enough,
Mhm.
or the other way around, because that could lead to a lot of other challenges which you don't necessarily just get from a tool, right? Because but then that kind of getting people to do that and saying, wait a minute, there's a misalignment here, so let's get this right first and then do that. And that is one of the things which I'm guessing maybe some of the customers that you have do it, because in that way they get a very different level view of it. And the second observation I had, and I've not taken your individual tool in terms of saying what my ability is. I'm just curious to see, because when you take a look at the organizational readiness tool as well as the department readiness tool, for lack of a better
Mhm.
word, so those are the two
Mhm.
levels. Wouldn't it also make sense that every person who takes your tool also has to take their AI ability? Because at the end of the day,
Yes.
it's like, if I do not necessarily know anything about AI, how am I even going to see whether AI is something that my company should be investing in, or my team or my function should be investing in? So, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yes, absolutely, Professor Deva. And that's how the tool is designed as well,
Okay.
where every business function head also takes up, the individual AI literacy assessment as well. In fact, we can even categorize it across departments to
Yeah.
see which departments in the
Ah,
organization has, you can do like a comparison too.
indeed. I love it, because I think for me that's one of the things I never got around to it yet, but hopefully I'll get around to doing it. And then that might also, even as an individual,
Yeah.
tell me, is my AI readiness clouding what I see my company doing? And similarly, if I'm a leader, is my
Mm-hmm.
AI readiness also going to cloud you know what I mean? Our view or cloud, or maybe, shine the spotlight on something when the rest of the organization thinks it's not ready yet. So I think that is the beauty of how it depends upon how well the tool is again being used within as
Absolutely.
well. In the interest of time, I have a couple of questions for you. The first one
Yes.
is, when you came up with these battery of questions, right, for each
Yes.
level of the questions, how did you come up with these questions? Was it based on your research or based on random walks experience when you were deploying? Because you mentioned that you have a wide portfolio of services, but you also do managed services for AI.
Yes.
Is this idea for this tool, was the genesis from how you actually saw projects that you had to deploy in companies, and then your learning led you to come up with these? Because otherwise you could say, well, no, we picked it out of parts of it from different places and then put it in there.
So it's a really good question, and it's a mix, right? First things first, we did extensive research into actual publications. You can go
Yeah.
through the big consulting firms, their publications on what are the success factors for successful AI adoption. What are the risk factors? So you've got
Yeah.
all these, case studies available, research publications available. And the second thing, like you rightly said, is our experience in the field. We also
Yeah.
collaborated with, CTOs and industry experts from different diverse industries. In building this tool, we also collaborated with academicians to get
Yeah.
their input. So it's a very holistic journey of tool
Uh,
development, I would say.
and because for me that is also irrelevant, because for me is one of the things that I always have, and that's pretty much where I'm hoping that Random Walk is also going to be more successful than what you're today, is a lot of them happen to work. If I'm talking to a Deloitte putting out a report, for example, right, they're dealing with the really, really big companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying they're not important, but as a startup, you might not necessarily have the scale yourself to be able to go do that. And you're probably talking to a lot of medium-sized businesses or startups themselves. And if the engine of almost every economy are going to be small and medium businesses, the digital savviness of these, I think, would be crucial in terms of how any region can develop in terms of being able to be, you said, innovative, being productive, and stuff like that. And I personally think the fact that you bring in your own personal expertise, because academics, yes, I'm an academic myself. Yes, I talk
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of companies, but I'm not there in the trenches deploying AI solutions, right? I am
Mm-hmm.
I am not a partner in a big consulting company who again it's been years since he, she, or they have actually been on the floor deploying it. It's actually the junior analysts doing it, but the people writing it are the people at the top. So what I
Mm-hmm.
really like when I see companies like yours, which are scaling up, is your experiences with small and medium businesses, which typically might be neglected
Mm-hmm.
from the focus of some of the really big. There's a reason as well, right? And that's what I really like about the fact that apart from everything that you've done, you've also taken in your own experience as a startup. When you deal with companies, some of them could be big, some of them could be small, and essentially what can you learn from each as well? And that's something that I have. My last question to you: we are all talking about generative AI, you're talking about all this, right? Now, is your model robust to factor in the fact that now people are talking about agentic AI, right? So essentially, just when oldies like me are just wrapping their head around this idea of generative AI, now suddenly you have agentic AI, right? And other kinds of things as well. So, do you think what you've created is robust, or would you have to go back and revisit the tool frequently?
Okay. First of all, you're not an oldie, Professor
Yeah.
Deva. You're as young as Sikkim. You're not an oldie. And to answer your question, yes, you're right. Agentic AI is definitely the next evolution in artificial intelligence, right? We're all familiar with Gen AI tools,
Indeed.
which generate content based on our on our prompt, on our
Yeah.
instructions.
Yeah.
But agentic AI takes it a step further where it
Yeah.
acts autonomously. It can plan your tasks, it can make decisions, it can take actions across tools and
Indeed.
across systems, right? So to answer your question on how AI robust today we are, first thing
Yeah.
is the tools that it can use, right? It
Yeah.
can interact with software tools in APIs and databases, and it
Yeah.
uses something called memory and feedback loop. So,
Yeah.
what it does is the agent just doesn't execute tasks. It's always
Yeah.
about absorbing data and,
Yeah.
feedback. So it looks at what's happening, it learns from it. The more the agent interacts with the system, the more it learns and improves, right? And we also have multi-agent collaboration. So
Yeah.
some setups involve, agents working together to solve,
And
really complex problems. So feedback loops, this multi-agent collaboration and continuous training of our AI agent is how we're trying to stay robust.
absolutely. No, maybe I did not say that my question correct. So essentially, what I'm saying is, it's very interesting you talk about this, right? Essentially, Salesforce is putting all its
Mm-hmm.
money in Agent Force, right? They even have the Agent Force team going across saying that the future is going to be Agent Force, with where a lot of the routine tasks can be automated to an agent, right? I am more interested in saying, if I take the tool
Mm-hmm.
of Readiness Tool, do I have to take the tool every time you have a new trend coming up with AI? Or the fact that I have it, the only thing that will change every year is that my maturity might change because as more and more people start using it. Am I making sense? Saying that how
Okay.
my, and that's what I mean. So essentially, because AI is going to evolve so fast, but every company cannot be taking this assessment all the time. So my
Correct.
question is, so how robust would, or how frequently do you think a company should be thinking about taking this assessment?
Assessment, right? So, first things in terms of frequency, we recommend that companies who haven't done this assessment, they
Yeah.
definitely should before they can think of any AI implementation. That's one. And from our side, we update our tool regularly. Like I said,
Yeah.
because our tool, the foundation of our tool is based on the benchmark of
Yeah.
all these, the reports that we get. So, for example, the benchmark last year would change within the next
I've
couple of
got it.
months, right? So we're always updating that in the back end.
Indeed.
But from the organization side, we definitely recommend they to do it once a year. It's
Yeah.
almost
Interesting.
like this performance appraisal that you do,
Yeah.
even in terms
Yeah.
of your digital transformation, right?
Indeed.
So you can see how your organization is progressing over time. Another very interesting, I really have to mention this year, coming from the training background, Professor Rajan, is that um, we also work extensively with HR and learning and development teams, right?
Mm,
So
mm.
what we would do is, in fact,
Yeah.
we would do this assessment as a pre-training need analysis,
Indeed.
design
Yeah.
our entire training content around this, and we come back again 6 months later, and we do another post-assessment to see, what is the progress and what is the ROI of training initiative.
I love it. And I think one of the things which I think in the time, because 30 minutes is too short to even go into that, and which I think, which I really liked about your tool was, even when I take a look at the 6 pillars, you had 6 pillars for the organizational readiness, and not every pillar is equally weighted, because I think everybody needs to also understand that depending upon the criticality for any company, certain factors might have a much more important role to play in readiness than the others. If I'm guessing, overall ethics and governance might be something that every company needs to have a very high level, especially if you're looking at data and what you're going to be dealing with it as well, right? So I think
Absolutely.
that's one of the things which I also liked about saying that it's not just a score that you get based on your self-evaluation, but it is also an evaluation based on what you think are essential building blocks. Some building blocks are more important than the others. So, for example, the foundation of a house is going to be a lot more important than certain other parts of the house. I'm not saying that the parts of the house are not important, but the foundation, if you don't have a solid foundation, you will have a problem as well. So that's again something that I really like. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Chan. And again, for my audience, Again, the AI is something that is going to evolve continuously, and despite a lot of talk about is AI overhyped or not, eventually it is going to crawl its way into organizations. And essentially, some organizations might do it faster, others might not, or it could be based on industry. But the key is wherever you start, at least know where you are, what is your baseline. And again, taking a look at a tool by RandomWalk, their AI readiness tool, or taking it individually for yourself would be something that I would suggest you try and do it as well. So, Chan, thank you so much for taking the time, and good luck with all your challenges.
Thank you, Professor Deva. I had such fun, talking to you. This was great. Thank you very much for having us.